Welcome to all of you. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today. I've been participating, as many of you have, listening to these sessions, and I have found it to be really eye-opening. There's like so many amazing experts out there, great voices out there, sharing really powerful stories of what people have been able to achieve engaging with their communities. And I have to tell you, as someone who's been involved in fostering and growing communities for decades now, it really is very gratifying and surprising to see kind of how far this field of community management, community operations, community engagement has come so far. So at the same time, though, I have to say, it does feel a little bit surreal for me to be here speaking with you as an expert on community development. So, like so many of you, I suspect I kind of backed into this world. I didn't begin my career thinking, I want to figure out how to get people to organize and how to support each other, right? For me, it just kind of happened. It happened organically. It happened as part of a side gig. It wasn't even my day job. So the fact of the matter is, I'm a problem solver. That's just who I am in my heart. And I hate having problems that I can't solve. So at some point, I started looking around. I found some other people with the same problem that I had. And the next thing you know, we're working together to come up with answers and collaborating. And at some point, I realized that the best, most exciting, most exhilarating part of my work and my career had actually become this community piece, right? So suddenly I realized, much later in my career, probably than many of you, like this is what I love. So here I am today speaking to you as a bit of an accidental community builder. And, coming from that perspective, I feel like I've learned a few lessons the hard way. And so that's what I want to share with you today. But first, I'm going to back up and share a little bit about how I got here, right? A little bit about my personal and professional journey. So I focused my career in something called legal operations. Right? What's that? You're thinking. Never heard of it? Well, trust me, nobody had ever heard of this when I started. No one. Even the people who were working in the legal space. Because back then, just the idea that you could be at a big company legal department and put any sort of like structure and order behind it was just revolutionary, right? But that's exactly how legal operations as a field started. It was this recognition amongst a small but growing number of us working within big legal departments that there must be a better way. Everything was just stuck in the past. There was like no real attempts to do things like budgeting or to use the latest technology or to try to figure out how can we do things better and faster and more efficiently. Really just generally trying to run the legal department and legal function more like a business. So that was a totally new field and one that was met with plenty of resistance, right? That's what happens. The reactions I encountered in those early days with starting up a new function was skepticism, right? You want to do what around here? To outright hostility. Just people don't like a lot of change. So back in 2008, I started at Google and I had this mandate to create a new legal operations function at this company. So I essentially pitched this idea for the role, and it was totally unheard of at the time. And then I set about trying to do everything myself from scratch. And I mean everything at that time, right? There was nothing in place, not just at Google, but really across the entire industry. There were no models, no best practices, no examples, right? We didn't know what other companies were doing. There were just a few of us that had started to dip our toes in the water into this uncertain new thing that we were calling legal operations. So that probably sounds a little familiar, right? I think it has so many parallels with the community profession and where we are today. So anyway, very quickly, I realized that I was going to get nowhere kind of on my own. So what did I do? I reached out, of course, to all those other pioneers out there who were kind of fighting their own lonely fights in their own companies. And we met each other and we organized into this new group, the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, or what we called CLOC for short. So fast forward many years, I became, I was president of Clock, and I saw this group grow into a global organization of legal operations professionals. And today there are probably roughly, 3,000 members around the globe in all kinds of industries, as this role has grown now in prevalence, in scope, and in stature. So from the very start, Clock as an organization, as a community, had innovation, collaboration, and just mutual support, part of our DNA. It's a totally member-driven community. It's a passionate group of people, and they all shared the same belief that I had, which was simply, there has to be a better way. So meanwhile, my work at Google started to show results. I built out a great big team. We made some big, exciting changes to the way their company was operating. And we kind of went beyond those basic challenges of the early days and started doing bigger, more sophisticated things. I loved it. It was a great experience. But after about 13 years of doing anything and being in, a pandemic, you kind of start to ask yourself, like, am I still challenging myself? And that's why just a few months ago, I decided to shift gears and change roles. So as Beth said, today I'm the Chief Community Officer for a company called Ironclad. It's a legal tech company, and it is a fast-growing and leading contracts lifecycle management company. So that's kind of how I got here, right? I started as a problem solver, really trying to reform the legal industry, and ended up accidentally falling in love with my side gig in the community. So along the way, I had to figure this all out. I made plenty of mistakes. And in fact, one of the things that kind of always struck me about community development and working with it was that there's a lot of unhelpful conventional wisdom out there, right? There's so many myths out there about what you're supposed to do or not do. And I kind of felt like I had to unlearn a lot of those before I could kind of get out of my own way and get things done. And so that's why I wanted to organize my talk today about 3 big myths that I think are holding people back from launching and fostering great communities. So I'll go through these 3 myths with you one by one, and we're going to dispel each of them. The first one for me is a big one. It's the field of dreams myth. We've all heard this, right? If you build it, they will come. Well, this is the belief that basically if you put the infrastructure, the platform in place, set everything up nicely, the community is just going to show up, right? It's the idea, which I think many people have, that communities can be planned into existence. And of course, the reality is not that, right? Communities that I've been part of and helped to build all began because there was some sense of shared mission. We had a common purpose at some level that really connected us, right? We had a common need, we had gaps that made us want to reach out to each other. And there was no plan for that, at least not for Clock in the early days. It was totally organic, right? We had no grand designs. We weren't planning on creating this global legal operations community until suddenly it was clear that this needed to happen, that we had people all over the world who wanted to be a part of this thing that had sprung up and were gravitating towards it. So to be clear though, like I'm not saying that planning and infrastructure don't matter, right? Remember, my background is in business operations. So I'm going to be the first one to champion that hiring of a community operations professional. So important. And if we hadn't done all that structuring and putting things in place, things like creating the organization, designing the events, thinking about the governance structure, so on and so forth, we wouldn't be here. We'd be nowhere, right? But when it comes to getting things started, you absolutely must have some kind of genuine core reason that is pulling people together. And that needs to be clear to everyone. So I know I've been invited to some communities that generally say, hey, this is going to be a great place for people in your profession to come here and talk about whatever is on your mind. And I'm like, what? Like, isn't that a bit vague, right? As a member, I feel like I need to know a clear purpose, the reason to first go check that out, and then to keep coming back, right? I can go chit chat with friends anywhere. What makes this place so special? So before there can be a roaring fire, there must be a spark. And that first spark has to come from a real shared purpose. Everything you build around that spark matters, but nothing is possible if you don't have that first common point of interest, right? Communities come into being when you offer people real value. The second myth that I think holds people back is this idea that community is a part of marketing, right? The community is really a component of the marketing strategy. And I know that's controversial. In this concept, though, the whole purpose and focus of community is to help drive the company's bottom line. So, imagine this. You get invited to a party, and then halfway through the party, you find out that the host is trying to sell you something. How does that make you feel, right? How long are you going to stick around? Are you ever going to come back here? That's essentially what so many people are doing as they're trying to spin up B2B, B2C communities. They're thinking, how can we drive people to buy and engage with our products, right? How many Instagram followers can we get? And if you have this mindset, you're essentially approaching people with only one thing on your mind, your bottom line business goals. And you will fail. Right? And we see this model formalized within organizations over and over. These days, many companies, community leaders, are reporting directly into marketing. And the problem I see with that is that the structuring of the function this way sort of forces community to align with the goals and the objectives of the marketing organization. And community then just becomes another demand gen channel for your products or services. Now, again, don't get me wrong, like one of the best reasons to launch a community is absolutely to help drive sales. If you are a community manager on the corporate side, like I am now, right? You want people, of course, you want people interacting with and investing in your solutions. But what you have to realize is that's simply one of the outcomes of an engaged and vibrant community, right? And it can be an intended outcome, but it should never be your purpose. And you will never get that engagement if you choke off the energy and the direction of that group and try and push your stuff, right? Any community is going to be defined by all of its members and all of their interactions, not just the way they use your product or not just their purchase behavior, and not just their interactions with your company, right? Don't forget that the members need to interact with each other too. So if you just have a social media following or some equivalent of that, then to me, that's not a vibrant community, right? The value of and the energy of the community is the sum of all those things. It's the relationships they're going to form with each other. It's the questions they're asking each other. It's the beliefs, the ideas that they collectively share. I have always personally been militant about protecting my communities from others or outsiders who are trying to gain access to them. So as a professional organization, Clock itself was a marketer's dream, right? We had all the buyers of legal technology and legal services in one figurative room. And the vendors, the providers, they were just banging on the door, trying to give us money to let us sell them our contact list, to let them send messages to our members, to get in front of this audience. But unless that there was like real value to our members, we were going to be really firm about this being a closed door community. Right? We had to earn, we had to keep the trust of our members, and we had to prove that this was a really safe space for them to learn and to share. And actually, being able to openly talk about some of these vendors and providers without them listening in was a real benefit about being a part of the Clock community. And so at the end of the day, it's all about value. And if you focus on the value to the members, the gives, the gets, then you're going to achieve a real engaged dynamic community, right? So ask yourself, why are these people giving you their most valuable resource, their time? And if you don't know why they're coming to you, then why would they, right? You need to know that. They need to know that. So this takes me to my third and final myth that I want to explore with you. And that's the idea that community approaches and experiences don't really need to be customized too much, right? The idea that when it comes to community, details don't really matter. And there's a lot of companies and organizations that try to approach very different groups of people with the same basic core kind of community building playbook, right? They look at, this has worked elsewhere, so let's just rinse and repeat over here. Well, remember back when I was saying, if you build it, they will come doesn't hold true when it comes to community, there's kind of a flip side to that as well, right? You could say if you build it wrong, they won't stay. So communities can start informally, and in fact, so many of the best ones do. In the early days of Clock, we didn't even have a name, we didn't have any sort of structure or anything. But kind of once we were underway, once it was clear that we had a real core of people who wanted to do something together, we needed structure and definition, and we had to build that fast, or we were going to lose all that momentum. And so community building is all about making choices, and every single choice that you make, from how you're going to structure the organization, how you're going to engage with people, how you reward and recognize your volunteers, how you're going to motivate people, every single thing either attracts or pushes people away. And so if you don't know your audience, you're making all of these choices in a vacuum of information, right? And of course, we all know no group of people are going to be the same. You need to understand what drives them, what motivates them, what they need, how they feel, where they are. And for me, this is where I had, and I continue to have, this huge advantage, right? And this is probably why I could very quickly accelerate the launch of a community program here at Ironclad within my first 100 days here. Because the secret is I had been the target audience. I was the target customer. And I just so happened to have built and led the largest, professional organization for this specific persona in the world. So I have this massive advantage, but it's still hard, right? It's still really hard because you have to be on top of so many things when it comes to defining the experience. Every part of the platform, every part of the structure, and so on, every little thing really matters. And so, here's an example I want to give about how important those details can be. We recently stood up our new digital platform for our community here at Ironclad, and I was pushing for a specific feature. So basically, I wanted people to be able to participate in the online forums, but also respond to comments and participate directly from email. So then I went and spoke to many experts in the community space, some really amazing, talented software providers, some web experience engineers, some engagement experts, and frankly, they were kind of horrified by what I had to say, because to them and so many others, right, the modern web experience for community is one that actually moves you away from email. You try to have everything happen within the platform itself. And there's really good reasons for that, right? It pulls people in, you get them to stay on and engage in different areas of your site. You can measure their engagement time, where they are on your site. It's more secure, so on and so forth. So I get that. But here's the thing. I know my people. I was one of them, and we are old school. We live on email. That is just the reality of this audience. And so I pushed for this little feature. And despite everyone telling me I was wrong and that nobody does it this way, I kept my position, and this was one of my absolute must-haves, non-negotiable features. And of course, that was going to cause pain and setbacks on timing, but I was not willing to compromise on this one. And you know what? At the end of the day, I feel like I was right. We set it up this way, and it's being used regularly. So sometimes you kind of just have to have the confidence to go against the grain and do what fits your audience, because every audience is different. And that confidence is only going to come with knowledge. So if you aren't lucky enough to be one of your community, then you need to do the work to get to know them, right? You can't just be a detached manager. You need to be there on the ground, meet with them, understand their needs, right? Create listening sessions, focus groups, anything you can do to make sure you understand this. And some of this can be formal research, but a lot of it can just be on the ground, engaging with them. And as you do this, you're learning about them, but you're also creating relationships. So as I said, I had a big starting advantage in my community's perspective, but I'm also constantly learning about them, because learning people doesn't stop. So I want to wrap up today just by pointing out that there is no perfect fail-proof approach to community, right? There's probably inevitable when you consider how complicated people ultimately are. Right? I like Elie Wiesel has a quote that I love, and she says in that quote, "We must see in every person a universe." Just think about how complex, layered, and at times irrational any individual person can be. Now, try to predict and manage the behavior of people in these large groups. It's impossible. Universes collide, right? So it can be no surprise to us that communities can be messy and super unpredictable, and they're hard to control, they're hard to manage, but they also offer wild, almost unlimited potential for achievement, for growth, for innovation. And so just look around. Just look about anywhere where you see people that are doing something groundbreaking, something big, something that's changing the world around them. And if you look closely, chances are you're going to find some sort of community spirit behind it. And that's so cool. I love that spirit. And I'm still learning how to foster it and nurture it, as I think we all are. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to share all this with you today. And I don't know if we have any time for questions, but I will turn it to Beth to see how we are doing.
We do. Thank you so much, Mary. That was fantastic. The chat is definitely busy. Our Q&A tab is also very busy. So I'm going to see if you can answer some of these questions in like 30 seconds or less so we can get to as many as we can. First question is from Michael. I have found that different community members are motivated to contribute by different factors. What are the various motivators you have identified, and what helps you to identify which factor drives each person?
Excellent question. And this goes back to the point of everyone is different, right? And you cannot predict those personas. So it is getting in there and as much as you can, engaging with folks and knowing what drives them, what motivates them, what is driving them to be in your community in the first place. And we found things like, hey, I just am trying to get answers to do my own job better. I'm trying to get ahead in my professional career. I'm trying to have a platform to showcase some of the cool things we're doing at my company. I want a platform for my own professional development and brand building. All those are totally different reasons that people come to the community and different ways that you can help understand their motivations and then help them succeed through giving them a platform, introducing them to others, helping them network for their careers, and connecting them with people who can answer the questions they might have.
Awesome. Okay, another question from Aaron. For those who may be a community team of one reporting to marketing, how do you recommend protecting the community while also needing to provide success metrics to hit KPIs?
Yeah, so I think you have to be very clear on what your success metrics are. And like I said, when you report to marketing, of course, you want to align with the objectives and goals of that group. But if you can make it very clear that the goals of a community should be manyfold and not just marketing focused, right? And I like to think of success metrics in two ways. There are the success metrics that contribute to the bottom line success of the company, right? How are you helping customer success? How are you helping marketing and sales? How are you helping product, et cetera? There's a whole nother set of metrics that's about the community itself. And are people engaged, and are people coming back, and are they getting what they need? And so I try to separate those a little, and those are both goals that you want to meet. And then just being very clear to your leadership team that this is the purpose of the community. It's for the members. It should be about them and the purpose, what motivates them and what drives them and how we can help them. Everything else, like I said, can be an intended consequence. And that's great. That's going to help your bottom line. But the focus, bring that back, bring that kind of message to your leadership team that the focus should be on the members.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mary, for your wisdom on stage here at CMX Summit. Please, everybody, join me in thanking Mary with all of your favorite emojis in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.